My name is Michael Isbell. I'm the Independent American Party candidate for the Attorney General of the state of Utah. Please allow me to share a few of my ideas about the war on drugs. This war, so-called on drugs, which America has waged since President Nixon initiated it in 1971, is one of the worst policy failures in my lifetime. There are more illegal drugs in our country. They're available readily. There are more illegal drug users than ever before. Now, the drug cartels are more pervasive, more violent, more wealthy and powerful than at any time ever before. The war seems more like a game of, I guess you'd call it whack-a-mole, than a real life effective action against a serious problem. For every seeming victory accompanied by proud pictures of drug agents with mounds of seized drugs, cash, and weapons, the harsh reality is the drug cartels do not feel the pinch. A few busts here and there are simply the cost of doing business, and business is still booming. What is to be done? No one can say with certainty, but I do believe that there's a commonly stated definition of insanity. It's continuing time after time, doing the same thing and expecting different results. Our approach does, by definition, look insane. It is not that we need to give the policy time to work, because 40 years in the wilderness is enough time for anyone with half a brain to determine the ineffectiveness of the policy. With decades as a felony criminal defense lawyer, I am keenly aware of what goes on at the front lines of this war, observing no cessation of the flood of drug cases and the revolving door of repeat violators who repeat even after being seriously punished for earlier crimes. I have commiserated with other defense attorneys, judges, prosecutors, and police who feel like we are straightening deck chairs on the Titanic because of the apparent futility of our efforts. The war on drugs is such an abysmal failure that judicial jurisdictions across the U.S. have turned to the creation of drug courts to keep from having the criminal systems completely flooded. I regularly see our drug court here in Ogden, Utah, standing room only. The alternative would be to build 4 new jails, or perhaps more. Drugs are a social problem, but not necessarily a criminal one. We prohibit drugs as a matter of self-protection from the ills that follow in their wake. However, if we can, by another approach, minimize those ills below the current levels, then a reasonably intelligent decision would be to take that approach. Now, there has been a call from many notables to rethink the policies of the war on drugs. In the nation of Portugal, they have been able to successfully implement a program where drugs are still a problem, but now they are regulated. It's high time for us to consider another approach. I submit we should be considering something like what Portugal has done. Now, there's a quote from a Washington Post article a few years back that briefly explains what they've done. I quote, and this is from the article: Portugal decriminalized the use of all drugs in 2001. Weed, cocaine, heroin, you name it. Portugal decided to treat possession and use of small quantities of these drugs as a public health issue, not a criminal one. Whenever we debate similar measures in the US, marijuana decriminalization, for instance, many drug policy makers predict dire consequences. The Portuguese have done this, and in all respects, it appears to certainly be working much better than our approach. As the quote from the Washington Post notes, there is no shortage of naysayers who fearmonger the American public with images of drug dealers, addicts, and the scum of society standing on the street corner in front of your suburban home. What dishonesty. A thoughtful, well-analyzed, and implemented public health plan to deal with drugs need never descend into such an abyss. I confess I do not have the expertise. I haven't paid the price in time, research, collaboration with others, or other ways to be able to myself proffer a detailed plan. But I do believe the general idea is solid common sense, and with plenty of smart people to participate in the debate, planning, implementation, and refinement, the operation of such a scheme could work. I am convinced we have an extreme likelihood of success if we pursue something of that nature. What would such a scheme look like? First, no one is suggesting that we just willy-nilly allow dangerous drugs to be scattered about our schools, our parks, and other public places which our children and families frequent. That's not going to happen. Instead, dangerous substances could be regulated. Various serious criminal sanctions could still be in place for violators of the regulatory plan, but not for those who act in accordance therewith. Those who wish to even recreationally use a dangerous drug could be required to register with the state as such. This would exempt them from the criminal sanctions for mere possession of limited amounts in areas allowed. The vehicle operator license of these users could be flagged, and they would be required to consent to a minimally intrusive field drug test in the event they are lawfully stopped, either driving or even just being in the public, walking on a public sidewalk. All the DUI laws still apply. But public intoxication, which might endanger or distress the public, would also be prohibited. Restrictions on location for use could be determined upon reasonable public safety considerations. Medical and pharmaceutical professionals could be involved in the plan to ensure the safety of drug users, with prescriptions required and reported in a state health database. Drugs could be manufactured by reputable pharmaceutical companies at a very low cost, since many of these drugs are not proprietary. You've got people cooking some of these up in garages and wherever.